going on in the Middle East. But of course, it is one of the number one topics on most people's minds. So tonight, I'm going to have an extended period of information about what is going on right now in the Middle East, especially when it comes to the Iran and, of course, United States and Israel war situation. Now, it's interesting that right now, and in fact, this Friday, they're going to be meeting with all the different contractors and munition suppliers within the United States. And they will meet executives of all the biggest defense contractors on the White House to discuss accelerating weapons production as the Pentagon works to replenish the supplies after strikes in Iran and several other military activities that have been going on. As you are well aware of, they have attacked Venezuela, but now, of course, they are, using lots of munitions and lots of supplies to bomb and also as well attack Iran. And so obviously they're running a little bit short of munitions, or they're getting to the place where it sounds like, from what we were talking about, at least the way Mr. Trump is talking, he's talking about 4 to 5 weeks. So that kind of gives us a timeline of how long the munitions that the current U.S. Government seems to have in their stockpile. Now, of course, they are meeting with all the top U.S. defense contractors on Friday to say, listen, we need you to accelerate the replenishing of our munitions. So it sounds like they are planning to keep this up for an extended period of time. Now, we learned yesterday, of course, that Pete Hegseth said that he was planning to keep this thing up until they win. Yesterday, of course, if you were listening to the Secretary of War's analysis, he basically said, we're going to do what we want to do until it is done. And we're not really going to worry about anybody saying anything about it. And in fact, it was very interesting that Spain, which was one of the European countries that, of course, said, no, you know what? We don't want you to use our bases for your attack on Iran. So you know what happened today? Mr. Trump basically said, what we're going to do is we're going to put a trade embargo on Spain because you're not supporting our efforts of what's going on in Iran and, of course, are attacking. And so now he's threatened to, of course, ruin the economy of Spain. Isn't that just interesting? Also, as well, I just looked at the oil prices of, they are up to $81.44 per barrel of oil. Okay. So last week they were just above $60. Now it was interesting that I was listening today to, of course, the governor of his name is Gavin Newsom, and he happens to be the governor of California. And he said something that was very interesting. He said that whenever there's a $10 increase in oil, he says automatically that will come up to about 26 cents basically in increase. So we have seen right now in the United States, we have seen an increase of 52 cents a gallon of gas. Now, of course, I was talking about the fact that yesterday in Canada, we saw an increase of about 59 cents per gallon when it comes to increase. So we're already starting to see the surging in oil prices and in gasoline prices. And that, of course, always accelerates every price. And so that is what's happening right now. Also, as well, this is kind of interesting. Syria, I was just reading, Syria has sent troops and armaments to the border with Lebanon, not with Israel, but with Lebanon. And basically, they're saying if the war spills over from Lebanon into Syria, we want to be ready. So all of a sudden, we see another front opening up, possibly with Israel and Syria going to battle. Now, we already know that, of course, Israel has already gone into Lebanon. Okay, they've sent actual troops into Lebanon. That is another an opening, of course, in this whole conflict, because just a couple of days ago, of course, Hezbollah started shooting rockets into northern Israel, and northern Israel started bombing, of course, the Hezbollah different infrastructure, and now they've sent troops into, of course, southern Lebanon. And that is going to, of course, increase casualties and more people are going to. So what we're seeing right now is we are seeing an expansion in just a few days of what's going on in the Middle East. It's not just United States and Israel, and it's not just against Iran. Iran, of course, has been bombing different places around the Gulf. And this is interesting. They said a couple of days ago that they were going to close down the state or the Strait of Hormuz. And so, you know what the United States said just today? President Trump said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have convoys of tankers and we're going to supply protection for these tankers. So you see what's happening is the Iranians say, you know what, we're going to do this. The only problem is the Iranian Navy has been totally destroyed. That was one of the first things that, of course, America did was they sank all the different vessels that were in the Persian Gulf. They took care of them. So what's going to happen is, of course, they're going to have to, you know, all these tankers, because you have to understand 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz. And the Straits of Hormuz are right, of course, on the Iranian coastline. And so they've said, we're going to do that. So the Americans say, you know what? We're going to provide protection for all these tankers. So that's going to bring a new wave to, of course, the war and what's going on. Now, I also read today that United States has decided to use now. Iran has been using suicide drones in, of course, their attacking of the different Gulf states. Okay, now the United States says, "Oh, you want to do that? We're going to do that as well." So now United States has said, "We're going to start using suicide drones too." Now, the problem with suicide drones is the fact that there is no guarantee of where they're going to land. They're kind of like the V-1 and V-2 bombers that were used by the Nazis. What they would do is they'd use these rockets and they would shoot it over towards Great Britain during World War II, and basically they would cause all kinds of destruction. Well, that's what United States has basically said. We're not just going to bomb you to back to the Stone Age. We're also going to use suicide drones against you. It's kind of a tit for tat type of situation. And like I said before, the United States has said we're going to provide escort for tankers. Now, it's also interesting that just today, okay, they talked about it, but now they're going to do it. Saudi Arabia has made a declaration right across the board. And they said, if we are attacked again, we are going to respond in kind. So now we're looking at Saudi Arabia now going and attacking Iran. So that is an interesting development as well. We haven't seen it happen yet, but they talk about it's going to happen. Now, it's also interesting. I was reading today, and what I'm giving you right now is all the information that I came across today. just before I came on today, I kind of went down and looked at all the different news events that were coming across. And intelligent experts actually expect that what's going to happen is there is going to be an activation of sleeper cells. Now, if you don't know what a sleeper cell is, it's people that are living ordinary lives. But the reality of the situation, they are trained spies. And what they are is they're going to be activated and they're going to start doing acts of terrorism in the different countries that they have been put into. Okay. And, India, for example, had to do with sleeper cells. Pakistan has had to do with sleeper cells. There have been sleeper cells in Western countries as well. And they believe that the intelligent agents are basically saying now that the war is in full view, it's not, like remember, back in June, they had the 12-day war. This is not going to be a 12-day war. This particular war is going to be longer. And this particular war involves United States. Okay, so what's going to happen? According to intelligent analysts, they say there is going to be acts of terrorism throughout United States and Western democracies because of sleeper cells. And so that's one thing that intelligent agents have been talking about, that there are Iranian and Muslim sleeper cells that have been placed in strategic places throughout, America and Western democracies. And now they're going to be activated. So, of course, they can do their damage. Now, it was also interesting today that the supreme leader in Iran has been, of course, named. And it's the son of Ayatollah Khomeini. Okay, so his son is now the new supreme leader, and they do know that he's in his 50s, and he's been kind of groomed towards this particular authority, this particular position, and he's very much like his dad, a very hard line individual. So basically, they're going to continue there in the same manner as they have been. The desire and the wish, of course, of the Iranian people to rise up against, and maybe they'll have a more moderate type of leader. That's not going to happen. Basically, it's become a family business. The country of Iran has become a family business because the supreme leader was killed and his son has now been named as the supreme leader. So it doesn't look like anything is going to particularly change, even though a lot of the executive leaders were eliminated. He has been named as, of course, the supreme leader. So it looks like it's more of the same. So also as well, this was kind of interesting. The war is now being debated in Congress. And there is, of course, a bill on in Congress sponsored by the Democrats to rein in President Trump's power. But we also know that the Republicans have power both in the Senate and in the Congress. And the only way that this particular bill will pass is, of course, if Republicans will vote that way. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. And even if they did win the vote, we know that the president has a veto, and of course, we know he's going to use that veto. But today, you had administration people from the Trump administration. They were explaining to Congress the reasons why they did this. Now, the only problem is that the narrative seems to change from day to day. This is also interesting. CNN did a survey that found that 60% of Americans are not in favor of this war. Only, a certain segment and there was a lot of people that were undecided. So the majority of Americans do not want this particular war because they know that it is a quagmire. They know that it could end up being another Afghanistan. It could be another Iraq. I mean, they are still to a certain point in Iraq. And they were in the country of the Afghanistan for over 20 years. And they literally, when they left back a couple of years ago, they left all these armaments in Afghanistan that were picked up by the Taliban and are now being used by the Taliban against their own people. So there's a lot of folks who are saying, are we going to have another Afghanistan? Are we going to find ourselves in a protracted, encounter with, of course, Iran? And remember, Iran is not the same as Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a substantially lessened amount of population. You have a country of 93 million people, okay? And you have a very effective resistance movement in Iran. And you have President Trump kind of toying with the idea of putting boots on the ground. You can't win a war by air power, even though I read today that basically Israel and also United States have total air superiority. They can pretty well do whatever they want to do when it comes to bombing and doing what they want to do. And it's kind of the same way when it comes to Israel and what's going on in, of course, southern Lebanon. And I heard today that the Israelis eliminated another top Hezbollah leader. So that seems to be part of the MO when it comes to Israel and United States. Also, as well, I was reading today, and we're talking about how that this is becoming a regional conflict. France is now sending an aircraft carrier into the Mediterranean, just off, of course, the area where also as well the big carrier that is I think it's the Gerald Ford that is right now in the Mediterranean. So the French are also sending a huge aircraft carrier. I was listening yesterday to what basically they were talking about all the different countries in the world that have aircraft carriers. And the country with the most aircraft carriers, of course, is the United States. They have, they have 11 nuclear powered aircraft carriers. And they have two of them, the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford. One is in the Arabian Sea, and the other one is, of course, in the Mediterranean Sea. And these are two of the flotillas that are, doing all of the attacks. Now, of course, they did send some big bombers in a couple of days ago to bomb the daylights out of Iran. It is very, very ugly right now. But we see what's happening is it is escalating very quickly into a regional conflict. You have France getting involved in there. There was an attack in Cyprus. There is also has been attacks to the Gulf states, and also as well we talked about what's been going on with Hezbollah, and now Syria is moving armaments and troops to the Lebanon border just in case it spills over into, of course, Syria. Now, as you remember, last year Syria, the Assad dictatorship basically fell apart. So now you have, of course, a more united Syria than you had back in the day. And so now they're sending troops to, of course, the border just in case it, of course, ends up going over. And we could see even a conflict happening with Israel and Syria. That could happen. What I also thought was very interesting today is that the U.S. Government said to all the U.S. citizens, you guys have got to leave the area. We are encouraging you to leave the area. The only problem is that, for example, 3,000 flights into the Gulf area were canceled today, 3,000 flights. And many of the airports are closed. So the US government has said, listen, we want you guys to get out, but you have to do it on your own ticket. You have to book your own flights and you got to figure out how to get out of there. They're not airlifting people out of there. And so this has caused a major kerfuffle as well, especially among you as citizens who are saying, listen, you guys were the ones who caused all of this problem. And now you're telling us that you want us to leave, but you're not going to do anything about it. We have to pay for our own ticket. So there's a little bit of animosity and also as well a little bit of, unhappiness when it comes to the American citizens who are being told by their government, you need to get out of there, but you're going to have to do it on your own ticket. So this is what's been going on today in, of course, the Middle East conflict. There we are. And so, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today. It is definitely escalating. It's definitely getting worse. And it is going to affect all of us. We have already seen how that the stock market has taken a real hit. We have seen how that oil prices have literally gone up. Now, for oil producing countries, this is absolutely a boom. I mean, for my province of Alberta, who was looking at, $65 or less when it comes to oil. Now, as of today, it is 81.44 and it's heading up again. They believe that in the trading tomorrow, it could get up even closer to $90 a barrel. Now, as Gavin Newsom said, he said every time there's a $10 increase in, of course, oil prices, it automatically comes to about 26 cents, per gallon. Okay. So we've already seen in Canada a rise of somewhere between 50 and 60 cents a gallon. And it's starting to happen in the United States as well. And it's going to be a little bit difficult for Mr. Trump because he made a promise when he was campaigning that he was going to lower gas prices and oil prices. That was his promise. And now the war that he has started, because it was under his particular advisement that they were going to do this. Now, he's given multitude reasons of why he did what he did. Someone said yesterday that the main reason that he actually pulled the trigger was because he had heard via the grapevine that the Iranians were planning to eliminate him. And so many analysts say, well, he pulled the trigger. His idea was, I'll get him before he gets me. So that's part of it as well. Now, we know that the narrative is changing from day to day. And there's a lot of pressure on the administration. But it doesn't look like Mr. Trump is going to back down. It doesn't look like Israel is going to back down. And it doesn't look like Iran is going to back down because we know that today the son of the supreme leader has been now named the supreme leader, and he's very much like his dad. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to have all these combatants who are going to refuse to back down. And who is going to be caught in the crossfire? Everybody else. That's what's going to happen. Hundreds of people have lost their lives in Iran. United States said that they have killed over 1,000 Iranian servicemen. That's what they said. That is their estimate right now. But whether they have or not, the issue is, of course, a lot of innocent people are going to be affected. Not only in the countries that are involved, but everybody around the world. Because as we talked about before, 20% of all of the oil that is supplied to Western democracies and different countries around the world comes from the Arabian states, from, of course, the Gulf states. And so you have United States saying, we're now going to escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And that is going to, of course, bring conflict. In fact, one of the tankers today was hit by a Arabian drone. So we know that that's basically what's happening already. All of this does not bode well for anyone involved. It is going to continue to escalate. And Mr. Trump said that they have yet to see the big wave. So there is a big wave coming to, of course, Iran. And it's going to be very destructive. And there's also going to be, of course, a continuation of what. When is Iran going to run out of drones and ballistic missiles? We don't know. We do know that from what Mr. Trump has indicated, he's probably got 4 or 5 weeks of armaments ready to go. And then, of course, on Friday, they're meeting with all the major contractors who supply armaments to the United States military. And they're going to be accelerating to build more armaments and to restockpile and replenish that which has been used. And so we're going to see the war machine of United States beginning to, of course, ramp up. And that is going to be a little bit scary as well, because when Mr. Trump uses it on one country, there is no guarantee that he won't use it on another. Last night, I talked about the fact that it could happen to Cuba. Mark Rubio, who is, of course, the Secretary of State, he is of Cuban descent. His parents had to flee Cuba. And he has made no bones about it that he would like to, of course, see Cuba become, part of the American sphere. He would like to see Cuba absolutely fail. Remember, they've already put an embargo around Cuba. They've told Venezuela, you can't sell any oil to Venezuela. They've said that to Mexico. So don't be surprised if the next country that the United States attacks is, of course, Cuba. That is something that we should be thinking about. What does that all mean? It means that we're living in a very chaotic and very, very dangerous time right now. And my advice for you and myself today is, of course, be very watchful, be very wise these days. Be wise with your investments. Be wise with your money. Be wise with, how you live day to day. It might be time to be a little bit more frugal. It might be that you should be a little bit more sensitive with your resources and, be very wise, because everything is going up and it will go up more in the short term because of what has been going on in the Middle East. Instability always means that the stock market goes crazy. Investors, I was actually reading today, are diversifying, and they're actually going into money or into gold. Those particular commodities that accelerate in times of difficulty. Investors are doing that. So they're dumping their stocks. And when they dump their stocks, well, guess what happens? The stock market goes into, of course, a tailspin. So that's all going to affect us. It's going to affect those who have RRSPs, those who do investments. And of course, these things are very volatile right now. So my simple exhortation is be wise. Be very wise with financial decisions. Be very wise with the type of things that you do. And also as well, pray. Pray, it says in the book of Psalms, for the peace of Jerusalem. But we need to pray for peace and that cooler heads would prevail. Ultimately, the only thing that's going to stop the war is somebody has got to blink. It doesn't sound like Mr. Trump's going to blink right away. It doesn't sound like Benjamin Netanyahu is going to blink. And it doesn't sound like the new supreme leader, who happens to be the son of the old supreme leader, doesn't sound like he's going to blink. So it sounds like this particular conflict is going to continue until somebody with common sense says we've got to stop. But it doesn't look like that right now. So let's pray that some common sense would come. Sooner or later, diplomacy needs to work. But we also know that Mr. Trump is not known for diplomacy. The reason he's not known for diplomacy is because while the Iranians thought that they had a deal or getting close to a deal, then Mr. Trump attacks. So we know, and I hate to say this, but we know that his word means very little. And that's unfortunate. We in Canada know that very well. We know that he said that he was, when that first agreement that was made back in his first term, which we call CUSMA, which was a trade deal between Canada, United States, and Mexico, he has basically said it's the worst deal ever. And he was the one who made the deal. So we know that right now, his word doesn't really mean much. So that is something to also be reminded about. Anyway, that's my thoughts today on what's been going on in the Middle East. Let me pray. Father, I pray today. The biggest thing, of course, is that so many people are being affected by this. Those in Iran, those in Lebanon, those in Israel, and even the Gulf states. And now we see it's becoming even bigger because we see what's happening in Lebanon, and we see what's happening in Syria, and we see what's happening around the world. We pray for peace. It doesn't look that right now, but I pray that somebody would blink, that instead of playing chicken with each other and seeing who has, the biggest stockpile, that cooler heads would prevail. Maybe the miracle will happen in the Congress and Senate when the Congress says, you know what, we've got to stop this because 60% of the constituents of the United States are against it. Maybe that will be enough. We don't know. So we just simply pray for those involved and make us wise as we are all affected by that. And let us think about a common sense approach when it comes to our own household, because we're going to see higher gas prices. We're going to see higher grocery prices. We're going to see higher prices everywhere because, of course, supply lines are totally dependent on diesel and gasoline and oil. And when they go up, everything else goes up. So let's be wise as we go into this time. And I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I wasn't planning to do a third YouTube Live, but as I was looking at it today, I recognized that this is on the mind of so many people. And we need to have a little common sense ourselves and how we can react. I know that many people are checking out the major news stations. They are checking out the different, purveyors of news. They're looking through social media. We want to be informed, and it's important to be informed. And it's important to be wise and discerning also as well. And so that's why I'm encouraging you to be wise and discerning on how you react. There are many players involved in this, many causes to this, many people to blame. But the reality is we're all affected by it because whatever happens in the Middle East will affect the entire world. When you think about the majority of the oil that is produced in Western nations and nations around the world come from the Gulf region. It really affects us all. So let's be wise and let's be discerning, and let's also, listen to good news, not to fake news. There's lots of fake news out there. Lots of people are giving their opinion. I today decided just to give the facts and then help you to have a response, a wise response, a response that is intelligent and understanding. So I hope I've done that today. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Thank you so much for joining me today. Also, as well, if you like what you're hearing, please press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, as well, check out my daily shorts. Every day I do, daily broadcasts. They're all under about a minute, and they are on different subjects. I did just a few of them before I came on tonight. So check them out. They'll be up in a few minutes. And just have yourself a great and godly day and be very wise, okay? And remember, every day is a gift, all right? Every day that we live is a present. So let's use it wisely. Thank you for joining me. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Have a great and godly day.